I'm Jan Gehl. I'm architect and urban designer and urban planner. My life has been in two different parts. I would say that the first half was research and writing books and changing the mindset of how we as architects approach things and making emphasis on being much more aware of the working for people. And the other part has been being invited to cities all over the world to come and apply these new mindset and advise them on how to make better cities. And I've been at that since I graduated 1960. That means 63 years, and I'm still at it.
Okay, so today in your conference you talked about the most livable cities. My question for you is, what does that mean in your opinion? What is a livable city nowadays?
Of course, I've studied what these various magazines, they have all of them different criteria. And say the economists, they look more into the livable is good for business, and Monocle look more into quality of life. So they have various criteria. But I think that quality of life is maybe a good way to look into it, because the purpose of city, of course, is that people should be able to make a full life and should be safe, and the children should be well cared for, and it should be nice to be an old person, to make a livable city. And of course, many cities have a long way to go to accomplish this for rich and poor and for old and young. But certainly, I think that's the goal we shall aim for. Leave no one behind.
Do you think this is synonymous with happiness? Like, are the happiest people living in the most livable cities? Do you think these come together or not?
I do think that these things are not too far apart, and you can't really, of course you can find extreme happiness in very poor physical conditions, but sort of if the conditions are too poor, then the happiness will end at some point, and there will be frustration and whatever. So I do think that a smooth environment where your needs are fulfilled and you can live your life as you like is important for happiness.
Okay, so you changed our understanding of spaces between buildings, of cities, through your books, obviously. How has your understanding evolved? Because I know that the first book that you wrote was back in the 60s, and we still apply the concepts until today. But how has your understanding of all these concepts that you have created and shown changed?
Oh, that's a very good question. I've been, my first book came out in 1971. It's called A Life Between Buildings. And it just 2 weeks ago, we published the 8th version in Danish. It's 7 in English and whatever. It's coming out still in new funny languages. And every time it comes out, the editors ask me, what would you like to change now? And then I read it, and then I give it back and say, it's about Homo sapiens, and he hasn't changed in 50 years. Peanuts. But one chapter I've changed, that is life between buildings in the current society circumstances. So in the latest, I talk more about that people get older, and we have a special commitment to make cities which are good to be old in. We also have to make cities which are more and more inviting for us to move ourselves instead of being transported all the time because of the sitting syndrome, where people sit too much and move too little and die too early. So we have a number of changing circumstances, but basically we are the same Homo sapiens as we were 2 million years ago. We have the same senses, we have the same way of moving, same way of same behavior. We have the same biological history, which has evolved over a very long period of time. And that's why all these people we can see around us, none of them are touching any of the other ones because we don't touch in our species. The seals do, but not people, not Homo sapiens. So we have a number of things which are so rooted in our biological history that they don't change.
How important was psychology in drafting these ideas? Because I've heard you said that you married a psychologist, and then she was like, how do you not look at humans?
If we go back to the 60s, the 50s where I was educated, and the 60s where I started to work, there was absolute silos, that the social sciences were here, the technical sciences were here, and the architects and the engineers, they did the buildings and they did the social work. And I mentioned that there was the idea that it didn't matter what you built, people will be happy anyway. And then in the 60s, there was this opening up of the world. It was 15 years after Second World War, people were starting to question what are we here for, what are we doing? And then the various professions started to look to see what the other ones were doing. And I happened to marry a psychologist, and that meant that in our house there was a lot of young architects, young sociologists, young psychologists, and all the time they were criticizing the architects for being technocratic fools who doesn't know a thing about what they were doing, and that they were putting people into concrete blocks without any concern for their souls and whatever, and the children and whatnot. It was not an easy time to be an architect because everything was done in the modernistic way. And of course, then my wife and I, we started to be curious. What about the borderland between social sciences and technical sciences? And the story is that we went to Italy for half a year with a grant to study how people used public space in Italy. We thought public space, that's Italy, we go to Italy. And then we had a very interesting, we made some articles, and it appeared that nothing was known about how the physical world influenced the life of people. And that had to be pioneered. And that was very much pioneered here in Copenhagen, and very much pioneered in our School of Architecture, which was one of three schools or three groupings of scientists who started to look into this matter. How does the built environment influence our lives? And of course we found that we build the cities, we form the cities, but the cities form us. We form the buildings, but the buildings form us. We form the spaces, and then the spaces can be, actually we can make two types of public space. A space where it's so awful and has so few amenities that the only thing you think of is running out as fast you can. And the other one is we can make a space so lovely and inviting that you could hardly drag yourself through this space without trying to sit down and enjoy it. It's a fantastic ability we have to influence where people be and where they do not be. We are here in a new town in Copenhagen, which is an awful new town, and you can go just one stop with the metro this way and find a place which is of this quality. It's so bad that people only think about sprinting out of the place as fast as they can. Other places in Copenhagen we found they come from all over the city because it's such a nice space. They could have done it here, they didn't think about it. This kind of people-oriented approach to city planning and architecture has always been immensely popular with people. When I talked about my thing, everybody would say, oh yeah, that's how it is, we can recognize, that could be me. So people have been very positive, and also politicians have generally been very positive because they are voted by the people, they have votes there. So if people are interesting, the politicians are interesting. It's been harder work with the architects because I've been criticizing the architects very heavily, and because of their strong egos, and the higher I can build, the better I will be, or their very funny buildings, which didn't add much to the quality of the environment, but maybe adds to the fame of this architect. So also with new towns like this one, there's been a problem because it's made by architects who are trained in architecture schools, of which many of them still doesn't do much for people. And also it's influenced by builders and developers who are generally a very conservative lot. They look back and see what worked previous time, and they start to redo that. And this one is interesting, this new town, because this is modernistic. It is a place where Corbusier would have felt extremely at home. But in Denmark, we hate this new town. And they have made new towns after this experience, which are much better.
What are your recommendations for the cities today?
I tried to make the point that what you count, you care for. And as you know, every city in the world has a traffic department, and every city in the world, they count all the cars every year, and then they give the figure to the mayor, and then the mayor say, we need more roads here and there. And what I've done is really to start to make the people visible by collecting data about where will they go, where will they not go, what are the factors which made this place wonderful and this place awful, and that's written in my books. That means that we, by data, have made people much more visible. And when you have the choice that you can make the world for people better, most mayors and most people would like that to happen. So I would say the same thing, that what you count, you care for. We always, when we come to a new city, we start to find out how it's working today, and then we can put forward plans for how it could be improved. And that is, of course, the logical way of working, because if you are going to restore a building, you don't start to put in bricks here and there. You start to survey the building and find out what the problems are. Then you can do something. I will end by quoting the mayor from New York, with whom I have worked, Michael Bloomberg. We did, of course, the transformation of Times Square as one of the things, which maybe was one of the highlights of that we were able to push the cars out there, some of them. But he was here in Copenhagen for a conference, and he said, you know, in America we say, in God we trust. And so I will start this by saying, in God we trust, but now bring me the data. And what I'm saying is that I think that is by getting data about, knowledge about what people like and what they do, then we can make a better city for people. And that has been missing until we started maybe 50 years ago in the small way, and 20 years ago it's sort of the way everybody does it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.